Smile.
But I'm not happy.
People
Why are you
staring.
I don't want to do this.
You have to. They'll know
No one
something's
cares
wrong.
about your
Why
life.
is that bad?
Nobody cares. They won't understand.
Nobody
You want to go
cares.
home. You'll hurt their feelings.
This was ridiculous.
What are we even talking about? Just
you want to
keep
keep
them
them
happy.
happy.
What if they
They're
think
gonna
you're
be mean.
stupid?
Just keep them happy.
Just keep them happy.
Just lie.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.
Hello and welcome to Real Honest, the podcast where I share candid thoughts and feelings about life, love, and relationships, God and church, adulting, the workplace, and everything in between. I am your host, Samantha Labat, and you probably won't always like me, but I will always be honest with you. If you are not familiar with the song that today's episode is titled after, we are talking about anxiety today. Quick goals check-in. I did finish chapter 4 of my book the other day, so very excited about that. There's 1 week left in June, so hopefully I can get chapter 5 done in that week, and then if I get chapter 6 done the first week of July, I will have the rest of July to write chapter 7, and then I will be fully caught up to my original plan. So fingers crossed that that happens. I am very anxious that I'm doing all of this work for no reason. Like, I have a lot of friends that keep telling me they're going to read the book and then don't. I do have a couple that are consistently reading it and giving feedback, but at the same time, I'm like, if I'm just writing it for this group of people, then it can just live in Google Docs and be written for them and never need to go anywhere. I attend all of these different writers workshops and publishing seminars just to be prepared of how to get an agent and how to get an editor. And I know that self-publishing is super easy these days and everyone does that, which is an avenue that I will look into after I have exhausted the possibilities of traditionally publishing, because that's just what I would prefer. But there is totally a world in which I finish writing this book and then I spend, 2 to 5 years trying to shop it around to publishers and never get one, and then I self-publish it, and then my mom and her friends are the only people that buy my book, and then I am like, why did I spend so much of my life working on that for this outcome? And I could let the fear of a negative outcome stop me from working on it at all. I have done that often in my life. But I could also be like, what if it's a great outcome? What if things go really well and I'm really excited about it and I get to look back and be happy about all the time and effort that I put into it? I am almost to 50 straight days of getting 10,000 steps every single day in a row. And you're supposed to lose round about a pound a week getting 10,000 steps a day, which is not happening for me. And that's really frustrating. And I could be like, well, why bother? If my weight's going to stay the same either way, why do I care? Or I could focus on I enjoy walking. Walking is fun. I like having more energy. I like just completing a big goal every day. I've read a lot that people who make their beds in the morning are have a more positive mindset and are more successful because it's an immediate thing you can check off your to-do list every single day. And getting 10,000 steps for me is like that, but it's something that takes a lot of effort, where making my bed is a no-brainer. It takes a minute and then I'm done, and it's all right, I did something. But getting 10,000 steps is something I have to actually work at every single day. And I do feel at the end of the day, if nothing else goes well, I am I got 10,000 steps a day, and that's huge. Another goal of mine that I don't think I've mentioned on here is wanting to change things up with my small group, and I don't really know how. I kind of want to end my small group, if I'm being totally honest, because the attendance has just been so inconsistent and so abysmal that I just feel when I started this, I had 20 to 30 people in my group that showed up every single week, and now it's a good day if I get 5, which honestly is not bad. I know that there are small group leaders at my church who only have 2 people in their group, or they lead for months and nobody joins, and they're just waiting and prayerfully being patient until people come to their group. So I know that I can have just as fulfilling, or sometimes even a more fulfilling conversation with 2 or 3 people than I could have with 15. And I don't really know why I'm so stuck in that mindset of feeling like a failure. I think it's just because I started off with so many people that like I got used to that and I got excited about it. And I also, in my first year of leading my group, I made a lot of friends in my group. And I think it was partially because there were so many people in my group. So like there just was a higher probability of being able to make a friend out of 20 people than there is out of 5. And because I currently don't feel like the relationships I'm building with my small group members are as strong as the relationships I built with different small group members like a few years ago, I definitely do feel that fear of like, what if this never gets back to what it was before? What if it never gets back to something that I like really, really look forward to every week and really am enjoying? Like, what if it's just run its course and what if it's just over? And I'm trying to get out of that mindset and just think like, well, okay, what if it never gets back to what it was before? But what if it becomes something better? Like, what if I have to go through this kind of weird season that I'm in right now for the group to get to a place that's even better than it was when it started, that I can't even imagine what that might look like right now? So this leads into what God is teaching me right now. In my prayer life in this season, I've been asking God a lot, like, show me who you are, tell me who you are. Like, I want to truly like know and understand your character. And I only have like 4 Bible verses memorized, but one of them is 2 Timothy 1:7, which is, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind. And I think that what that verse tells me about God is that when I am feeling fear and anxiety, that is not from God. When I am feeling powerful and loving and loved and of sound mind, peace, and calm, that is from God. And that's where God desires for me to be. This is not to say that I'm never going to be anxious. And I know that like the body has like a fight or flight system for a reason. And a lot of times fear and anxiety is your body's way of protecting you. So I'm not trying to say that if you love God, you're never going to be anxious. More what I'm trying to say is, for anyone out there who is similar to me, that if you grew up feeling like everything that happened in your life was either a direct blessing from God for like, congratulations, you're a good little Christian, or a punishment from God of like, you didn't pray enough today, you weren't loving enough today, I'm gonna hurt you. Like, if that's how you perceive God, then this is a way that has been helpful for me to learn that that mindset was incorrect. So a few nights ago, I had a mild, very, very mild, I don't even want to call it an anxiety attack, but just mild anxiety, where I woke up at 2:00 in the morning and I laid there and I tossed and turned until 6:00 in the morning. Like, I just could not get back to sleep. And my mind was just racing over like, you don't have a job, you can't pay your bills, you're not good enough, no one's going to hire you, you're going to lose your house, you're going to lose everything, like you're going to live in a box on the side of the road. And I tried to fight it a little bit. I was like, well, I'm not completely out of a job yet, and I am applying. I'm applying to jobs every single day. I'm just not hearing back from anyone. I'm getting a lot of rejections. I've only had 2 interviews. The first one was last week, and the second round, they're not calling people back for the second round for another week. And my second place that has offered me an interview, the interview is on Tuesday. So like, at this point, with the 2 options that I have to make it to Tuesday and I have to make it a whole week past now. And then I'm just like hearing the voice in my head being like, that's not enough. Like, you need to get up right now, get up at 4:00 in the morning and search for more jobs, and do not get off LinkedIn until somebody responds to you and offers you a job, which like, that's just, no one's doing that at 4:00 in the morning on a Saturday. Like, that's just not happening. And anytime that something like this happened to me in my like early to mid 20s and prior to that, I would feel like God was punishing me because I wasn't trying enough. Like, I wasn't looking hard enough for a job. I wasn't applying to enough jobs every day. And that's why I wasn't hearing from God. And then the fact that I would try to sleep when I don't have enough job interviews, God was like, that's ridiculous. And so he's going to wake me up and yell at me until I get out of bed and start looking for jobs again. But I have grown, thank God. And so I was aware that this was not God yelling at me, but I still needed some more reassurance. So I went to one of my friends who's a spiritual mentor, and I told her, like, I did not sleep at all last night. Here's the thoughts that were attacking me. Like, here's what was going on. And she very like calmly and immediately was like, hey, those are thoughts from the devil. This is not God yelling at you. God gives you a spirit of power and of love and of a sound mind, right? So God is going to be the one saying, good job. You applied to jobs today. You can rest. I know that it's going to take time. So you've done what you can do today. Maybe you've done what you can do this week, whatever, the time period is. You need to rest, because when you are rested, you can have peace. The enemy is going to stop you from resting. He's going to wake you up in the middle of the night and attack you with all of these negative thoughts. And now you're not rested. And now you're spending the whole day spinning your wheels. And if you had gotten up at 3 o'clock in the morning and was just frantically applying for jobs then with this like anxious spirit, how good do you think those applications were going to be? Like, you weren't going to be meticulously getting your resume to match the keywords for each individual job as you have been, or like really going through being detail oriented with the cover letters. Like, is that something that you would have been coherent enough to do 4 o'clock this morning? Probably not. And for those of you who don't believe in God, like, sorry that this segment is so long today. I know that this means nothing to you, but for those of you who do believe in God, like, the first thing that you have to do is know the truth, which you're only going to get from reading the Bible. And then once you know the truth and you really learn, like, who is God and what does God want and how does God feel and where is God working in my life? Like, once you know that, you've got to get other people in your life who know the truth and are going to repeat it to you, because at the end of the day, you're going to forget. And you're going to get in these like negative mind loops, and you need to have people that you can go to that can help pull you out of it. So moving into the topic of fear and anxiety this week. While I think these are emotions that all of us are going to feel to some degree, some worse than others throughout our lives, I think that we've all got to come up with ways to not allow the fear and anxiety to take over to the point where we're making all of our decisions out of that fear, or making all of our decisions to avoid feeling anxious, because that's what holds us back from our potential, and that's what makes us lack consistency. And I know that last week I kind of just rambled on about consistency, and I never really got to my like actual purpose of why I was talking about it, which is that a lack of consistency leads to a lack of trust. And I think that in most relationships, if we don't have trust, we have nothing. I shared an example last week about a conversation I had with my sister where she said, what do you want me to say right now that's going to be helpful for you? What is it that you're wanting to hear? And I told her, and she repeated the words back to me, like verbatim, exactly what I had said to her. And that made me really anxious. I mean, I could feel, it was like critters were crawling up my spine, like while she was talking, while hearing like nails on a chalkboard. Like, I have just never been this uncomfortable. And I was retelling the whole story to my therapist, and my therapist was cringing, and she was like, oh my gosh, she's like I can feel, she's like, I see what's happening to your body right now as you're reliving it, and I'm just so sorry that that was so uncomfortable for you. Like, I feel that. And so, like, where does that discomfort even come from? Like, why is it so uncomfortable for me to say something and have somebody repeat the words back to me? Like, why is that bad? And what I realized is it was the fear of not being seen, because what I want more than anything in the world is to be seen and known and loved by the people that I see and know and love. Like, I want to be very relational with them. I want to get each other. I want to know each other. I want to see each other. And I want to be able to just have conversations where we don't have to constantly explain ourselves to people. I want us to just understand. And so historically, with my sister, when we have conversations, she does not understand me. And so for me to tell her exactly what I wanted her to say, I was feeling like even if I give her the words and she repeats them, because the words are not coming from her, she doesn't get them. And it's already painful for me that she doesn't get me and that she doesn't know me and that she doesn't understand me. So I think, like, to hear her say something to me and still lack the understanding, like, that's painful for me. Like that really, really hurts. And that was like the spiders going up my spine and the cringing of just like, I don't want to feel this pain. I don't want to feel this discomfort. But what actually happened was, from her point of view, like hearing me say the words that I wanted her to say helped her understand me. And then her saying them, like she got to practice, like, all right, what does it feel like when I say this? Like, can I say this and it be true? Like, yeah, I can. And then we were like both crying together, and she came over and hugged me, and she told me a few days later, she's like, I knew what to do because years and years and years ago, there was a day that like we were all in the house and we were having a fight. It was like me and I think one of my sisters and one of my parents were also there, but like it just was this big, like me, like trying to explain like how I was feeling, and nobody was getting it. And everybody was just looking at me like I have 10 heads. And I was just sobbing and screaming, like just so desperate for anyone to understand and to like see me. And my sister came over and she hugged me. I don't even remember this day at all, probably because it happens so often in that house. But I have no recollection of like what it was that I was talking about, or even specifically which family members were there. But she remembers it. Like this day is ingrained in her memory. And she said she remembers it because we all got together and talked about it the next day. And she says that I told the family, I said, Alex is the only one that came and hugged me while I was crying. Like usually when I cry, you guys stare at me or you walk away or I get sent to my room. But like Alex crossed the room and she held me. And that is what I have always needed. And that's what I've always wanted, like when I'm this upset. And so she said like she never forgot that and she remembers it. So like 2 weeks ago when I was crying, she just like got up and came and like held me and we cried together. And like that felt really nice and cathartic to me. So when I talk about like consistency and trust, like I am a very emotional person. Like I cry a lot. So if you are somebody that I frequently cry to, if your reaction is to be like, why are you crying? Please stop crying, to like awkwardly change the subject or back out of it to where it makes me feel like crying is bad or wrong, or I shouldn't have done it, or I can't do it in front of you, that communicates to me that you are not a safe person for me to be vulnerable with. And so I can't trust you with my feelings. So if I'm repeatedly having experiences with you where you're making me feel bad for having feelings or making me uncomfortable, then when you reach out to me and you ask how I'm feeling and you want me to share with you, I'm not going to trust you to hold my emotions. I'm not going to trust you to care for me. I'm going to trust you to hurt me because that's what's historically happened. And I think that's why a lot of us don't have the hard conversations, because the trust is not there that the hard conversation is going to go well. And the trust isn't there because the person that we're trying to have the conversation with has not been consistent in having safe reactions or responses. And so then we become afraid that this person is never going to have a safe reaction or response. And so we just recoil from them and we never have the conversation that we need to have. And then we're never able to like make it through that space. And to my sister's credit, she says we do have to give people the opportunity to react better and to respond well. And if somebody has consistently not done that, we do owe it to ourselves and them, if we want to preserve the relationship, to have a conversation about why we don't share things with them and what needs to change in order for us to be able to do that. But I also understand that there is a fear in that relationship, because I could come to you and completely lay out like, here's the type of relationship that I want to have with you. And you could be on the same page and be like, I want us to have that too. And then we can talk about like, all right, well, here's what I need to do to get us there. And here's what you need to do to get us there. But even if we agree on that, like one of us may be unwilling or incapable to do what needs to be done to get to the relationship to where we want it. And if that's the case, like, it just really, that's anxiety inducing. Well, it's like, great, I put it out there, I bared my soul, it didn't work, and then that's really uncomfortable, and not wanting to feel that is why we don't have the conversation in the first place. My family is very fix-it oriented. So like anytime anyone has a problem, it's just, what can we do to fix it? You're sad? How can you stop being sad? You need a job? How can we get you a job as quickly as possible? You need to pay off debt? How can we get you as much money as quickly as possible? And focusing so much on the solution or fixing the problem often doesn't give space to like care for the person. So if you've seen Inside Out, okay, Joy, who runs Riley's mind, has this belief that sadness is bad, and anything sadness touches is broken and terrible, and she just tries to keep sadness away from Riley's controls. And then they go through the whole journey of the movie and learn that, okay, sometimes Riley just needs to feel sad, and if she can just cry it out, she can move on. But if we stop her from doing that, then everything builds up and then everything breaks and she gets depressed. And this is why I'm so obsessed with Cameron, because like when I was 13 and I was depressed and I was constantly talking about how I hated the world and wanted to die, my dad was like, stop saying that. And Cameron was like, yeah, it's a terrible world that we live in. Like, I get why you wouldn't want to be here. And because he understood how I was feeling and he didn't make me feel bad for feeling it, he didn't make me feel wrong or weird or uncomfortable, he just provided a safe place to feel what I was feeling, I was able to get through it with him much quicker. Or with my family, it felt like nobody understood why I was so unhappy and nobody understood why I didn't want to be on this earth. And they were just like, those feelings that you're having are wrong. Those feelings that you're having are bad. We need to get rid of them. Like, let's get you to therapy. Let's get you some medication so that you don't feel that way anymore. And that just perpetuated the feeling that like, I am wrong. I am bad. I shouldn't be here. I need to be fixed. And if you've seen Inside Out 2, you know that we all have these different beliefs about ourselves. And one of the beliefs that I grew up with is that I am not good enough. I feel like I grew up always being compared to my sisters, who in my eyes were perfect in every way. Like they were perfect students, they were perfect sisters, they were perfect daughters, and I was just constantly messing up, where it's like I was always getting in trouble, they weren't getting in trouble. I had a teacher in high school who looked at me one day and like announced to the class, she's like, you know, I see the Labatt face and I expect it to just sit back there and be quiet, and you are constantly disrupting. Like, you're always back there whispering to people, which like, yes, I was talking during the lecture and shouldn't have been, but like it just perpetuated this idea of like the Labatt face is a perfect, pristine face that doesn't do anything wrong, and like here I come tarnishing it. My family is full of perfectionists and people pleasers, and I'm sure that it comes partially from being Black in America. It's like, you know, we live in this world where it's like wherever we go, we're like the only Black person in the office, the only Black person in the classroom. And like that's stressful and irritating because it feels like you have to prove yourself 3 times over to actually belong there. Because it's like, if I'm the only one of my kind here, that in itself makes me feel like I don't belong. Like, why am I here? The rest of you look the same. So I'm the one that shouldn't be here. I'm the odd man out. And I think as a parent, if you grew up feeling like you never belonged, even unconsciously, then you probably want your kids to feel like they belong, and you probably go out of your way to make sure that your kids have the right clothes and the right hair and the right personality, and you know, you're gonna respond to them in certain ways. Like if they say something that you think is weird or bad, you're gonna try to make sure they don't do that again so that nobody perceives them as weird or bad, so that they can be accepted. But what that actually does is perpetuate the belief that they are weird or bad or not good enough than if you actually just accept them and listen to their thoughts and say like, yeah, those are normal thoughts to have. This is not to say that if your kid is depressed, you should be like, oh yes, sweetie, depression is great. Everyone is depressed. Just sit there and cry your eyes out and start self-harming. Like, that's so not what I'm saying here at all. Please don't take that away. What I am saying is let's consider the type of help that we offer people. And also consider that like something that I need in a certain situation is not what you may need in that same situation. So I should not default to providing you the help that I think I would need or that I think I would want, as opposed to figuring out the actual thing that's really going to help you. We assume that people know how we feel because we are in our heads all the time. So, for example, like any time that I am in love with a man, I assume that he knows because, well, for one, I'm just really obvious about it. Like, I don't bother to pretend not to be in love. When I was like a teenager, I was never the girl that was like playing it cool. I was the girl that was like staring at him from the other side of the classroom, like talking too loud in the cafeteria so that he would look toward my table. Like, I was always calling a lot of attention to myself because I wanted the dude to notice me, and my friends would be like, Samantha, you're talking really loud. I'd be like, yeah, that's the point. He's looking this way. But I've always felt like I love this person so much that even if I don't tell them, they're going to know. And I also love this person so much that if they love me back, even like the 0.0000001%, then that's enough because I love them enough for both of us. And that just like doesn't make any sense, and it's not realistic, because you have to consider like the time that you spend thinking about this person and the time that you actually spend with them and the time that you spend talking to them. And when you are with them or when you're talking to them, how much of that time are you sharing the thoughts that you were having when you were home thinking of them? Probably not a whole lot. You know, this is part of why, like, I talk about Cameron on here so much, really and truly, because he's my only friend that I know 100% without a shadow of a doubt is going to be my friend for life. So I hesitate to talk about other friends on here because I'm like, if I look back on this podcast in 5 years and I'm not friends with that person anymore, it might be weird. But if I look back on this podcast in 20 years, Cameron will still be my best friend. So I'm just not like worried about it. But I've been building that trust with him for over 10 years. Like, we've had seasons where we've talked every single day and really gotten to know each other and really gotten to love each other. And we have told each other like constantly how much we love each other, to the point where now we can go 6 months without speaking at all. And I know like why that's happening. I know that it has nothing to do with us not loving each other anymore or us not wanting to be in each other's lives anymore. Like, I have that trust. Whereas with a newer friend, or even with my sisters, it's like, if we don't talk for 6 months, I'm asking those questions. I'm like, are we not talking because we're not friends anymore? Are we not talking because she doesn't like me? Does she not want to talk to me? Like, whereas with Cameron, I am like, I know that he's busy. I know that he's going through something. I know that there's something that he's working on that's taking his time and attention right now. And it's because I know him that well to be able to trust that it's not about me. Because I trust that if Cameron is mad at me, he is going to tell me. And it's also so much easier for he and I to have those conversations because we both know that if one of us is mad and we're going to fight about something or whatever, maybe it's a light disagreement, we both know that at the end of the conversation, the love is still there and the friendship is there, and we don't have to agree on everything to keep that. Whereas with other friends that I'm not on that level with, or my sisters, like, it might be something to where we have a conversation and an argument and we don't trust that we're still gonna love each other and be friends at the end of it. Like, I might have an argument with my sister and we might not speak again for 6 months because we're both so anxious, and then asking like, oh no, like, did that ruin us? Like, can we fix this? Because we haven't had the opportunity to spend the time to really get to know each other, to understand and trust that we're still going to have each other at the end of it. One of my really good friends, she's just not great at texting. She's really good at like FaceTime dates, but she's so busy. She's hard to schedule a FaceTime date with. And so I try to make a point to see her in person at least once a year so that we can spend like a weekend together, like a few days of like getting to know each other, because we're both really, really awesome like in person together. But most of our conversations is just like, hey, I love you too. hey, I love you too. And we do that. Sometimes we do it every week. Sometimes we don't talk for a few months and then one of us is randomly like, hi, I love you. And it's like, other people probably might think that's really weird, but it's like we're trying to establish that trust, like not consciously. This is not a conversation that I've ever had with her, but it's more like whenever she pops into my head, I'm like, I just want her to know that I love her and I'm here. And I will text her and just say, hey, I love you and I'm here. If you need anything, you want to talk, like let me know. And she always responds and says the same thing to me. And sometimes like one of us does call the other and there is like something that we really need to discuss. And like usually it's so far it's always been a really positive relationship. So we are building that trust and building that rapport. It's a lot slower. But I also talked a little bit last week about how like, what is it? You have to have 7 or 8 like positive interactions to negate a negative one. And so she and I have had like 1 or 2 negative interactions that I can think of. So even though our interactions are like much slower, it's like we'll have 12 positive interactions and then a negative one and then 13 positive ones. So at least it's reinforcing and creating memories that she is a safe person and that I do have that trust with her and that she does love me and I do love her. I have another friend who I've only met in person one time because she lives in Brazil. And she is a doctor and she's also very busy. So she and I can't talk a whole lot. But when we do talk, she's very direct. She's very blunt. And in the beginning, like that hurt my feelings a lot and she'll say like, I'm going to give it to you straight. Like you're being ridiculous. This is stupid. Like whatever it is. And those were negative interactions for me in the beginning until I talked to her about it. And she explained to me one day, like, I absolutely love you. Like, I love being your friend. I love talking to you. I love listening to you. I think that I have a different perspective than a lot of the people in your life that is hard for you to hear. And I'm not offering the perspective to hurt you. I'm offering it because I want to be your friend. And I think that it's something that is going to stretch and grow you in the long run. And I love her to death. Like I truly am so grateful for this woman's friendship because she is that type of no nonsense friend who is never going to just tell you what you want to hear. And also like is not sending me random nonsense pictures of her food or whatever. It's like when we talk, we're having like a candid conversation about something and we both are blunt with each other and like, here are my thoughts, here are my feelings. And we've established that we should say to each other up front, like, hey, I don't know if you're going to like this, but here's like truly what I think about that. I feel like a lot of people listen to me and their takeaway is like, okay, Samantha just wants friends that like always agree with her. Everyone's always on her side and just tells her what she wants to hear. And that's absolutely not true. And I'm also not trying to change anyone because I do think there is a degree in these like conversations about friendships. I think there's a degree of feeling like, well, you just don't like anyone and you just don't accept anyone. And like, you need to just accept people as they are. And like, why are you trying to change the way that people interact and change the way that people talk? Like, you shouldn't have to tell your sister what to say to you when you're sad. Like, she should get to just say whatever comes to mind to say, and that should be okay with you. In which case, like, yes, I agree. I do want everyone to be themselves. At the same time, if my friend comes to me and says like, hey, whenever we're talking about XYZ, you repeatedly do ABC and it makes me uncomfortable or it hurts my feelings or it's totally neutral and I want it to be something that's like helpful and inspiring or whatever, you know, if I get that feedback and I say like, well, I'm just being myself and you just don't love and accept me the way that I am effectively telling my friend, I don't care that my reactions bother you. I don't care that you feel that I'm mean and upsetting and I don't love you. And, you know, it's like, then it's like, well, why is that person friends with me? Like, if I care about the relationship and about the person, I'm going to take the feedback and I'm going to try to grow and change. And of course, like, you guys have heard so many of my stories on here, right? Like, there are those relationships where I'm going to say, like, I don't care about the relationship enough to give you what you need from me, you know? And like, the truth hurts sometimes. I really struggle with having been in therapy so much longer than my sisters because it does make me feel like in many situations I am more emotionally mature than them, and it's really difficult to like listen to them talk about things or watch them walk through things that a more emotionally mature person wouldn't have to struggle with, because also like as you know, as a family member or friends, like you don't want to watch anyone struggle. And usually from the outside looking in, you go into fix it mode and you're like, oh, this could be so much easier if you would just insert simple solution, but then put yourself in the situation and you don't do that solution, or you try it and it doesn't work, and there's different things. So my sisters have told me that like there have been multiple occasions where I have said things to them like, oh, you know, like, oh, you know, you cute little baby therapy goer, like just wait, like you'll figure it out, you'll get to the other side, you'll become enlightened like me. And those are not the actual words. I've never said those actual words to either of my sisters, but that's the paraphrase. Like that's what they received from what I've said. And that hurts them because it makes them feel small. It makes them feel like I think I'm better than them. And I have the same experience with friends of mine who have been in therapy longer than I have, where they talk to me like they're so enlightened and they're so high and mighty and they're so great and in touch with emotions and they know how to respond to things, and I'm just crazy and fly off the handle and they're just smarter than me. And like I hate to feel that way. And even if that's like, they don't actually think they're better than me. I don't actually think I'm better than my sisters. And it's difficult to convey what you're trying to convey in a way that doesn't make the person feel that way. And I go to these friends and I say like, hey, I feel like you're talking down to me. Like, I know you're not trying to, but I'm feeling really small when I talk to you and I don't like it. And then it's like, if you're so enlightened and you've been through all the world's therapy and you know everything in the world, then you know how to fix this and make me not feel like an idiot when I talk to you. But that being said, it is a true fact that some of these friends are more emotionally mature than me. It is true that many of my friends are more rational than me. And it is true that many of my friends make more sound decisions than I am. And that when I am thinking through things or processing through things, it's like really easy for them to see what should be done or should be fixed. But at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter what anyone else sees. It only matters what I see and what I have the ability to see. And some people are going to have a conversation with me and help me see what they see. And other people are going to have a conversation with me and they're going to realize that I'm not able to see what they see. I'm not there yet. And we need to find a different way to navigate the situation. If you have no idea what I'm saying here, like if you're not relating to this part at all, think about anything that you are an expert in and dumb it down. Like literally anything at all, any subject that you were really good at in school, or even like if you're super into anime, like think about trying to explain it to somebody who doesn't even know what anime is. And then like think about if you explain it to them one time and then the task is for them to go off and to explain it to someone else, and you watch them trying to explain this thing to someone else and they're getting it wrong, and you're just like, oh my gosh, if you would just spend more time with me understanding it or more time learning the thing before you would go out and try to help anyone, like you would get it. But I've been loving this thing for 10 years, or I've been working in this job or practicing this thing for 20 years and that's why I'm an expert in it. And once you have spent that much time on it, like you'll get it. But then you have to think like, okay, where were you in the early stages? And if you're 20 years in and your friend is 1 year in, even if you can remember where you were at 1 year in, that's not necessarily where your friend is. Like your 1 year might be comparable to their 5 year, or it might be comparable to their 2 months. And it's not a one-to-one experience. They're not going to go at the same pace that you went, but they're also not going to be to where you are immediately. They might get there faster or slower. They might never get there. So bringing this back to fear and anxiety, it's like if we're trying to bring all of our friends onto our level of emotional maturity or past experience or whatever it is, like if we're always trying to do that and we operate from a place of being afraid they will never get there, like no amount of therapy is going to get to this person the place to where I am, or like I've been through all this trauma and this person that I'm talking to hasn't been through any trauma, and the only way to understand me is if they experience some trauma, and I don't wish for them to experience that, and they're never going to go out and try to find it, so they're never going to understand me, and then we just can't be friends. Like that's a possibility that I think fear and anxiety will have you sit in, and you will just never realize what this relationship could be. But it's also possible that there is another way for them to understand you that you haven't even thought of. Like maybe you lost your parents at a young age and you believe that it's totally impossible for anyone who has not lost a parent to be able to relate to you. But maybe there is some type of loss in one of your friends' lives that they are able to empathize with you. And if you don't try to have the conversations with them and you just write them off and dismiss them as like, oh, you'll never get it, then you can't ever build the trust and consistency. Anxiety causes people to live in worst case scenarios, which I think seems to be like a symptom of parenting. I am not a parent, so this is just what I have observed from parents that I know, but parents seem to like live in worst case scenarios and constantly trying to like put their children in bubbles or give them things that will stop them from experiencing anything bad. And I think a lot of parents don't stop and think about the fact that putting the child in the bubble is also bad. Like now the poor kid just suffocated in the bubble when you were trying to save them from the bad air outside. So like, how do you not live in hope? How do you get out of anxiety spirals? Personally, this is where faith comes in. Like, I think if you are a Christian and you believe in God and you believe in the Bible and what the Bible says and you believe in who God is, if you truly believe that, then that means that you truly believe that there is life after the lives that we're currently living on this earth. And if you believe that, then this earth holds a lot less weight. There's a lot less stock in it, because this is not eternity and we have somewhere else to go. And it's like, yeah, we would want to be as comfortable as possible while we're here, but it's also like this is such a small part of like our lives that if bad things happen, it's like, okay, but we move on. Now, it helps me to look at the world that way. It helps me to look at my faith and say, if I truly have faith that God is who he says he is, and that God wants what's best for me, and that God doesn't want me to feel pain and suffer, but I also know that I'm going to feel pain and suffer, but God's going to be with me in those moments, then I really have nothing to worry about. Because if I do lose my job and I lose my house, and like I'm not going to be in a box on the side of the road. Like God has put people in my life that love me, that will help me, that will care for me, and maybe the situation isn't going to be ideal, but maybe the situation is going to lead to something that I haven't even thought of. Like maybe there's a friend that I have to move in with for a short time, and maybe that's going to unlock new doors in our relationship that I didn't think existed before. Maybe there's someone that you want to ask on a date, and maybe you're worried that they're going to say no, and you're so anxious that you're going to be embarrassed, and you let that anxiety stop you from asking them. Okay, well, so now you still don't get to go on your date. So it's like if you ask them and they say no, then you don't go on a date and everything essentially is exactly as it was before. And I know some people are like, well, but before I asked them, they didn't know that I liked them and we were casually talking as friends, but you were unhappy, right? Because you wanted it to be more and you were uncomfortable. And so it's like, now you know, and you can move forward in confidence. If the person lashes out at you and is like, gross, you're disgusting, how dare you ask me on a date, you're a terrible person, because that's one of the worst case scenarios in your brain, right? Well, now they did you a favor because now they let you know that they're terrible and you don't actually want to date them. Whether you believe in God or maybe it's the universe or maybe it's just nothing, like you probably have some type of idea of like, how much control do you have over life? If you are a person who believes that you have all of the control over your destiny and you can choose anything that you want to do, well then great, you have nothing to worry about because you can just make life what you want it to be. If you are a person who believes that everything is predestined and everything is as it's supposed to be and it doesn't really matter what you do, then you also have nothing to worry about because whether you try or don't try, you're going to end up in the same place. If you believe somewhere in the middle where like you do have choices, but depending on the choices you make, like things can go well or they can go badly, and you're really wanting to make sure that everything goes well, like you've got to know that's just not how life works. Like nobody is happy all the time. And by making all of your decisions to avoid sadness, you've probably realized by now that usually when you try to push something away, it just gets bigger. Like, isn't that kind of the whole point of like mindfulness and meditation, is like acknowledge the thought and then let it go? Because the more you try to suppress the thought, like then the more it just grows. So you're actually having the opposite effect by actively trying to always avoid any kind of anxiety or sadness. Like you're better off just letting it in, feeling the feels, and then having the catharsis and moving on. So for my hard conversation this week, last week I talked to you guys about like one of my friends gives the types of responses of like, that sucks, sorry to hear that, aw, sad emoji, like just not helpful. And I told you guys how like she's just not a friend that I go to when I'm sad. Like if I'm having a bad day, if I'm not in a good mood, I just go to different friends. Like I don't bother to talk to her. But this week, like she was being really persistent where like she would say like, how's your day going? And I'd be like, not great. And she'd be like, oh, well, I hope tomorrow's better. And I just wouldn't answer her. And then an hour later, she'd be like, how was the rest of the day? And I'd be like, still awful. And she'd be like, oh, that sucks. And it's like she kept starting conversations with me and I kept not answering because I wasn't getting anything from it. And I was like, I just don't have the energy to deal with this right now. And so then what happened though was she had a bad day. And I forget specifically what she had said, but you know, it was one of those things where I was like, things aren't great. Like, how about you? And she's like, not great either. Like and she like kind of went into, some high level detail of like what was going on. And I said, I don't want to say that that sucks or just that I hope it gets better because I don't know if that would be helpful for you. Would that be helpful to you if I said that? And she said, no, actually, I don't think it would. And I told her, you know, it kind of pisses me off when I get those types of responses from people. Like if I am talking about job stress and I'm saying like, my job is going away, I don't have something lined up in time, I am worried about like losing my house and being unable to pay my bills, and somebody says to me, that sucks, hope you get it figured out, like that makes me want to punch them in the face because I am like, how dare, like it feels minimizing. It feels like basically in the back of their head they're just thinking like, oh, that sucks, glad it's not me. But it's like, you know, they're not saying anything that's helpful to me. And she said, yeah, you know, actually I feel the same way. And she said, I'm really sorry if that's how I've been responding to you, because now that I think about it, it really, like, that's not helpful to me. Like if I'm in that situation and people say something like that to me, like that does bother me and it's not helpful. And she said, I really don't know what to say in these situations. And I asked her like, you know, what would be helpful to you with what you're going through? And she said, I think I would need something practical. I think she said that it was health related. So it was kind of like she would need like, you know, doctors or like advice from somebody who had been through like a similar situation. And so I was saying, yeah, I think what would be helpful to me is if like people communicated that they understood like what I'm going through and maybe offered some kind of practical help. Like, I guess I have had some friends be like, are you financially good? Like, do you need some help? And I've been like, I'm good for now. I appreciate the offer. I'm glad to know like who I can reach out to if I need it. But I want someone to be like, you know, that sounds really stressful. Like, I'm sorry that you're stressed. Just kind of like sit in it with me for a minute. Because if you sit in it with me, then I feel like you heard me and I feel like you understand. Whereas if your immediate response is, well, hopefully tomorrow's better than today if today was bad, then that kind of tells me that like you don't really want to talk about today. And because today wasn't good, you're like, all right, well, let's just move on to something good. And I don't know that tomorrow's going to be good. Like this might be a bad week. And then are you effectively trying to tell me that I can't talk to you if I have a bad week, or like what's going on? And she was really receptive to it. I did pitch all of it. Like I said all of this to her in like the third person, where just like I just said now, I said like, well, when people respond to me like this, I didn't like specifically say like, when you say this to me, I hate it. It drives me nuts. And I actually think that was like a good approach to take with her, because I think if I had said like you, I think that makes people feel attacked. And I think putting it in the third person allowed her to like take the specific of she and I out of it and like actually put herself in my shoes in a hypothetical situation and really be able to think through like what she might want and what would be helpful. So things have not totally turned around since we've had that conversation. She has kind of reverted back to the responses that she's had before. But I also think like that's what she's used to doing with me. Like that has been our dynamic and our interactions of just like talking about our day, like really quick, really high level, like not really going anywhere with it. And what I have learned is that she is totally interested in doing more than that, but she needs a little more prompting than my other friends. So like I have to get better at like when she says something like that feels dismissive, I don't necessarily respond to say like what you just said feels really dismissive. I just redirect her like with a specific question, or if I want to go deeper in the thing, then I'll just like say more about it. And do it that way. So this is very different than like the conversation I had with my sister that was a very specific, like, tell me ABC, like what you need me to do. This was more low key, and it was also a super low stakes conversation to have because I'm not particularly invested in making our relationship more than it is. I'm very okay with what it is right now, and she's very okay with it as well. So it's one of those things where if I had like tried to have this conversation with her and she essentially said like, yeah, I'm not like, it's totally helpful for me when people say like, oh, that sucks, buddy. Like, you know, like if she would have said like, that's enough and that helps her and that's great and that's just how she's going to respond, I would have been like, you know, I would have stayed where I was prior to us having the conversation of just like, all right, cool. So that's just not a person for me to go to when I need a little more. But you know, when I want it just like the mundane, like, hey, how's your day? How's the weather? How's work? That kind of stuff. Then like, that's how I go to, and that's fine. And so I think we both are open to keeping it where it is. And we also are both open to growing it. And that's really great. And that's really awesome. And that's what I mean by low stakes. Of like low stakes is like, if nothing changes, like worst case scenario is that you have this conversation and then nothing changes. And if you don't need anything to change, then you're good. I totally understand that it's way more anxiety inducing when it is a high stakes conversation where it's like you need things to change and things are going to change regardless, where like either this relationship is going nowhere, it's going south, or it's about to end, and you want to say like, I really want to keep it going, how do we do that? And you risk the other person like, I don't feel the same way, I don't care if we never speak again, and then it's like that really, really hurts your feelings. I totally get that, because I have one of those conversations that I need to have too, where I basically like have this friend where I'm like, I really like, I feel like our friendship is very one-sided and I want it to be two-sided, but I feel like the other person is totally chill with the way things are right now and is also totally chill with the idea of us just not being friends anymore. And I feel like those are the only two options that they're going to give me. It's either we change nothing or bye-bye. And I'm really, really anxious about that, but also like I don't know that for sure. Like it's totally possible that there are more than those two options on the table, and I just don't know what they are because I haven't asked, and I'm scared to ask because I feel like accepting the friendship that I have right now is safe, and I feel like it's better than nothing because I don't want to not be friends. So I'm just kind of like, if this is all they're going to give me, then I need to just settle. But I think that that is hurting me in the long run. And maybe this is a situation where they need to tell me like, hey, let's just never speak again. Like, let me free up your time to go talk to someone else that can give you what you need, because I can't. And that will suck, but I will survive if that's how it goes. Movie recommendations of the week are obviously Inside Out and Inside Out 2. Absolutely love them. Inside Out is better, But Inside Out 2 is still very, very good. I thought it was excellent. Big fan. There were little things that I was like, this doesn't make any sense. But I mean, it's Pixar. It doesn't have to totally make sense. Inside Out 2 is very triggering and really and truly, like, I consider it a horror movie. So do with that what you will. I haven't been recommending a book every week because I'm not necessarily reading at that cadence, but just because it's relevant. This week I am recommending Ugly Love by Colleen Hoover. It is a romance novel, so if you hate those, don't read it. But I love the messaging of it, which is like you have to be able to confront and accept the ugly side of love to also experience the beautiful side of it, where she just talks about like there's good love, there's bad love, there's there's love that's painful, and that's just a part of love. And if you go into relationships trying to never experience any type of pain, then you're not going to be able to experience the joyous side of it, because they both come with it, right? It's like the people that you trust the most, the people that you care about the most, those are the people that have the most power to hurt you because of the way that you feel about them. Like, it makes it very high stakes. But those are also the people that have the ability to make you feel higher than you ever have. So you have to be willing to risk the pain and to experience the pain and to work through it to get the like joyous ecstasy side of love. And I think that that book does a really good job like explaining that, in a romance novel. But I love Colleen Hoover. So also if you hate her, don't read it. Okay, that's all I got for you today. Thanks for listening. New episodes Wednesdays at 6 a.m. Central. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, topic ideas, or want to chat, shoot me an email at realhonestpod@gmail.com. Okay, bye.
I'm not here to sugarcoat, life's already a bumpy road. Too much shelter causes pain, let's just be real honest. Things are gonna knock you down, avoidance will not help you out. Let's talk it through, here me and you, let's keep it real honest.